Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
At Villere's Florist, we deliver the magic of flowers 7 days a week to the North Shore and South Shore in the New Orleans area. Whether it's for birthday parties, baby celebrations, Villere's provides colorful floral displays for all. With a store full of fresh-cut flowers, exotic tropical flowers, orchids, roses, and even fruit baskets, our goal is to make your vision a reality. Villere's Florist, proudly serving Louisiana since 1969.
Homeowners insurance increasing or deductible too high? Call, click, or come in. Save it, Dave. Dave Miette Insurance Agency.
For over 48 years, Southern Tires and Auto Repair has provided services across the New Orleans metro area. Southern Tires offers a range of tires for all vehicles and ATVs. We also have a full suite of auto repair options, including brake repair, rim repair, custom exhaust, steering and suspension, tire siping, and so much more. Southern Tires and Auto Repair, 2550 Hickory Avenue in Metairie.
C&C Drugs is a family-owned pharmacy that's been serving Southeast Louisiana for over 50 years. Whether you need help taking care of an elderly family member, a growing child, or even a pet, C&C provides patient-centered care for your entire family. C&C Drugs, large enough to serve you, small enough to know you. Locations in Mandeville and Araby.
Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Over the next hour, we're going to talk a lot about what's going on with the home teams, the departure of Sean Payton, basketball, football, all on tap. And of course, we're live from our state-of-the-art Pontchartrain Production Studios on a beautiful day here in New Orleans. Breaking it down for us is one of the senior members of the sports media here in New Orleans. Has done a great job with the Saints Hall of Fame. You can catch him on 106.1 FM with the Three Tailgaters, the longest running sports radio show in the city. Also, again, all access each and every evening at 6. And then, of course, the most prolific high school scoreboard and high school show on a Friday night, of course, as well, and also the originator of CrescentCitySports.com. Ken Trahan joins us on the program, and there's a whole lot more that I just didn't even get to. Kenny, how are you, buddy?
Well, you're making me tired just describing all of that, but I'm perfectly fine.
Every time we talk, because I don't know how you. I think I have a full schedule, and you trump me every time.
It's pretty funny because Ed Daniels and I have conversations all the time, and we're kindred spirits, and we're both talking to each other regularly, like, man, are we doing this again? Yeah, we're doing this again. And then, oh, I'm going to take some time off. It's going to slow down. And it never happens. And in many ways, that's a blessing because the opportunities do exist in your hometown. On the other hand, yeah, it's not so easy when you start to get a little bit older. But I'm very fortunate, very blessed.
You're the Energizer Bunny. I mean, there's just no other way around it. If people knew what your schedule was, again, they would be taking vacations all the time if they were you. Let's start off, first of all, tell us about what you're involved in. Tell us about CrescentCitySports.com. Of course, your great prep show, what's happening with you on the radio station, and any other things that you're involved in.
Well, the radio work, of course, I've been in that industry since 1978 here locally in my hometown. And now I'm just really blessed to be on 106.1 FM and with Cumulus, because Cumulus is a major player, not just locally, but statewide and nationally. And then, of course, with the outreach that the signal has, it's significantly better than other entities and places that I've been previously, which is also great. And it's FM, which is another plus. And, of course, working with Pat Galloway, who's a great manager and a really good friend, is another plus. We do the show at 6 o'clock following Inside New Orleans at 4, which I advise everybody to listen to every chance they get. And we have guests on. Sometimes we don't, and it's a smorgasbord of information. The prep shows during the football season, that's just finished 27 years of that, and it's statewide, and And it's a tiresome process just mentioning it. And then, of course, the Three Tailgater Show, which we've done for that long a period of time as well. Ed Daniels and I have done it from day one with different people as that third person, but the two of us marshal on and have a wonderful time doing it. The Saints Hall of Fame is of course, something I helped give birth to in 1988, and I'm still there nurturing it and watering it and trying to get those flowers to bloom again. So our media selection committee met just recently to discuss what's going to be done this year in 2022. Our advisory committee submitted their recommendation, and of course the organization doing the same, and we have events all year long to fund the nonprofit museum, which we're working on relocating as we speak. Stay tuned on that. And then, of course, with regard to CrescentCitySports.com, started that enterprise beginning of 2008, so here we are 14 years down the road by a different name since 2017, which I own, and it's been great and have tremendous contributors. Jude Young partners with me and does a great job, and Lenny Van Gilder does a fantastic job, and all the contributors are really good. We think it's something that not only stood the test of time, but it's really kind of bridged the gap. Long story short, when we started this thing, when I was approached about it, I was skeptical at first, but then I saw the vision and I understood that it was ahead of the game, that the newspaper business was declining. True. And that you have an opportunity to marry printed word with audio and visual, and to bring live games to people and such. And it was not only a novel concept, it was unique at the time. Other people have copied it since then, and that's flattering. And I'm not here to brag on it, but the fact of the matter is that we really kind of labeled that brand here in this particular area, and others have jumped on board. In anybody that promotes high school sports in particular, I'm all for it. Yes. So I'm happy that it's kind of migrated out and evolved into some other things with other people.
Right. And again, continuing to do a great job with both prep and of course the pros on both radio and also again with the website, which I tell everybody all the time, put it on your favorites, because the great writers, local, you're going to be able to learn something each and every day. It's one of my go-to websites. There's no doubt about it. Ken, kind of a shocking week this week with again the departure of Sean Payton stepping down. After 16 years, 152-89, 9-8 in the playoffs, 3 NFC championships, three NFC championship games, 1 NFC championship, 1 Super Bowl championship, and conflicted. 7 division titles or 6?
Yeah, they won 6. And then, of course, in addition to that, 10 seasons of 10 wins or more along the way, and you know, the 9 playoff appearances. So you're talking about, look, by any measure. And I've read and heard and listened to several things in the last couple of days, and I'm just astounded that some people would find a way to be critical at this point. Nobody's perfect, and no one is going to have a perfect record, and no one is going to do everything right. And surely he did not. And surely there were disappointing seasons, and even disappointing personalities and disappointing plays. But in the final analysis, when you're talking about the body of work and what he brought to this football franchise and what he brought to this community, and what he did for this community, the city, the metropolitan area, the state, it's remarkable. It is something that we should never forget. And then there are people that are like scared to death that he's going to go coach elsewhere. That's likely at some point. And yet my answer to that is, so what? Appreciate him for what he did here. I mean, he stuck this out for 16 years and even stuck through being suspended for a year. And by the way, if you want to know how the organization perceived him, how many owners would have kept their coach during the midst of an investigation and the punishment that was meted out? I would suggest to you that, I don't know, putting a raw number on it, maybe 70-80% of the owners would have fired that coach.
Absolutely.
Not only was he not fired, his contract was not only extended, but he was given a healthy pay raise. So that told you what Mr. Benson thought about him, and he was smart to do it because he realized what a great coach he had and how effective he was. So, look, again, this is a praise party today. He deserves every measure of praise from myself, from yourself, and from the masses. And like I said, if you want to pick it apart, what didn't go right ahead. I found it funny about some of the things he pulled out, though, as, you know, Superdome Special, the double reverse to Reggie Bush against the Buccaneers, which he dubbed the Superdome Special, was anything but special. And then, of course, the Rob Ninkovich thing, which he pulled out of left field, which was kind of funny because Ninkovich is on television now, so he's going to really have fun with that when he's on this Friday on national television, Ninkovich. And then, but there were others like that too. I mean, they're going to miss on people. There's evaluations that you make, and they don't work out. Al Wood turned out to be a good player elsewhere, not here. And I could go on and on about that. I mean, you have a defensive tackle from Canada that didn't work out here. He went to the Bears, became a heck of a player. It happens all the time. So you're never going to be perfect. But again, the balance of work that was done here was tremendous.
Yes.
And will he be missed? You bet he will be.
Oh, already missed. Are you kidding me? Legacy. If you could paint a picture, he's going to be in the Saints Hall of Fame one day. What's the legacy?
I really think he's a fringe, if not already a Pro Football Hall of Famer. I think he's a fringe guy because of the one title. And everybody's going to harp on the Super Bowl championships. That's always the case. And every time people bring that up, I ask them about the Dan Marinos of the world and people that were fantastic players. Did you think Dan Marino was great? Did you think Warren Moon was great? Of course he was. Those guys are Pro Football Hall of Famers. They bore no responsibility of who was surrounding them as teammates or who was coaching them or assembling the teams. At the time, they were never the best team. In the case of the New Orleans Saints, in my opinion, they were the best team once, and that was in 2011. They were the best team in the NFL, and they did not win it. In 2009, they were one of the 2 or 3 best teams. I thought Minnesota was probably better overall, talent-wise, but Tracy Porter comes up with an interception on a terribly ill-advised throw by Brett Favre and changed history because the Vikings are likely going to kick a field goal and win the game there. It didn't happen. And then in overtime, we all know what happened there. But the Saints were terrific in that season. But on no other occasion were they the best team, with the possible argument of 2018 with the NOLA no call. In my mind, they would have beaten the Patriots had they played them in the Super Bowl. And so I would probably add that season too. So I guess on the plus side, the 3 NFC championships, the Super Bowl championship. On the negative side, the misses, and people will always lament those because in 2011 they were the best team in the NFL, hands down, and lost that game in the last 14 seconds at San Francisco, even though they'd overcome 4 turnovers. And then, of course, losing in the NOLA no-call game. But even prior to that, the game of the Minnesota Miracle was absolutely brutal. Should never have happened. But that was just getting started in the playoffs, so who knows how far they would have gone. NOLA no-call was different. They were going to the Super Bowl, didn't happen. And then the overtime game with the Vikings, when they didn't play well and Rudolph pushed off. So, I mean, you've got some massive disappointments in there. And even Brees, in the end of his career in 2020, when he was a shell of what he was still good enough to get them where they got. And still good enough to have them in position to be up 2 scores in the 3rd quarter when Jared Cook fumbles the ball. So there's a lot of circumstances that could have made this substantially richer for Peyton's legacy. But I think it's secure. Now, if he goes somewhere else and wins, then I think he cements himself as a Pro Football Hall of Fame inductee. But as far as his legacy, by far the best we've ever had. Certainly one of the best coaches of this century to this point in time, not debatable. That's not named Bill Belichick. So, well, he's obviously #1 in Saints history, and he's one of the best in this century.
21st overall in wins, 1 Super Bowl championship. Some believe that you have to have a second to be able to get in. Some believe that is the plan here, to try to go to a team that is pretty much ready-made to go to a Super Bowl. Everybody believing Dallas may be that destination within a year or two to cement that. And look, if you look at, and I went over this on the radio show the other day, Jimmy Johnson 4 years, Parcells 3 years. There was a life expectancy with Jerry Jones. If you can get there and go for 3-4 years, maybe there's a chance to be able to get another ring.
Yeah, I think they're set up to be successful with personnel. The problem is the intrusion by Jerry Jones and whether or not he would be willing to acquiesce some of that. Look, he can still go talk to the media all he wants, which is something he's never going to stop doing. But from the standpoint of running football operations, make no mistake about it, and this takes nothing away from Mickey Loomis or Jeff Ireland or anybody that's been here, be it Terry Fontenot or Kai Harley or Ryan Pace or any of the people, Omar Khan, that have come through this organization that have gone on to bigger things in the league. Sean Payton calls the shots. He always has, and he said it at his press conference. He got everything he wanted anytime he wanted them. They never told me no. He was the final decision on personnel. He was the final decision on pretty much everything. And again, that detracts nothing from the others who have done an excellent job. But to go to Dallas, there's no question in my mind that Jerry Jones would have to surrender. But there's this other thought process about that. Jerry Jones is not getting any younger.
Right.
So Stephen Jones will play a larger role. Does Sean Payton perceive that Stephen Jones might be a bit different in his approach than Jerry Jones would be? Because if that's the case, then it would be more attractive to him. I think it's attractive to him anyway.
Right.
I don't think the history lies, and the history is simple. He coached there under his mentor, Bill Parcells, and by the way, he's going to follow the Parcells playbook. Then when he left there, he ended up in New Orleans, as we all know. But while he was in New Orleans, at one point he moved his family to Dallas while he was still head coach of the Saints.
Right.
And the only reason that didn't go through is, of course, the family breakup that took place in that situation. In 2012, when he was suspended, where was he? He was in Dallas,
Right.
or in the Dallas area.
Right.
When the Saints got out for Hurricane Ida, where did they go?
Dallas.
They went to Dallas. Where did they practice for the first 10 days? In Jerry World.
Right.
I mean, I could go on if you'd like.
Well,
but
and also 2019, which we found out this week.
he
Mike
almost
Flores,
left for
he
Dallas.
almost left, which again,
Correct.
no one knew about.
No.
No one knew that, again, that there was a trade in place to trade Sean
Right.
Payton in 2019, but Anthony Davis saying that he would not sign a new contract with the Pelicans at that point. Vince Benson shut that down, and instead they gave him an extension on his deal. I don't think anybody had any inkling of that was going on.
No, and you could understand why then, because he's probably thinking at that point, this was my best shot.
Right.
We got
No
cheated, and I don't know that we're ever going to get this chance, and Drew's not getting any younger.
Right.
So I have always said, and this is not a revelation because I'm sure you've said it or others have said it, but I said from day one, dating back to 2000, well, not day one, but once we saw what Drew Brees was, certainly by 2009, that these two were inextricably tied together, that when one left, the other would leave.
Yes.
Well, it took 1 year for that to happen. And this is in no way, shape, or form an indictment of the current quarterbacks. They don't bear any responsibility for Sean Payton leaving. But the fact of the matter is, Drew Brees, at 60 to 75% of what he was, is still better than most NFL quarterbacks. And not having him help make you look good by making calls at the line of scrimmage or going the right places with the ball is a different animal.
Yeah.
To have that guy at that position is unique, and any coach in the league is going to want to have that and strive for that. And if he doesn't, his chances of being ultimately very successful are minimal.
Yeah. I want to go where you just went. A lot of people believe that he left because there's not a franchise quarterback here in New Orleans. If there was a franchise quarterback here in New Orleans, he would have stuck it out. Your take?
Possibly. I don't know that for a fact, and anybody that claims to know that I think would not be telling the truth. So I think it certainly would have been a consideration. If he was walking away from a Saints team that was 12-4, 13-3, and on the cusp of winning it all, then it certainly would raise eyebrows a bit. But he's walking away from a 9-8 team that had to fight for every inch all season long, with an offense ranked 29th to 32nd all season long, that just couldn't muster much and couldn't score a point, without a quarterback they could depend on after Jameis Winston got hurt, and without any receivers that they could really count on consistently, without a tight end they could count on consistently, with a chopped up offensive line that simply wasn't very good. And he's looking at the tea leaves and saying, we need to fix a lot of things offensively. They're very good defensively.
Yes.
And if they keep the pieces in place, first and foremost, to re-sign Marcus Williams, they're going to continue to be good, in particular if Dennis Allen is elevated to head coach, because it would be a seamless transition, and I think that's what's going to happen ultimately. But I think that had there been a Drew Brees or a Drew Brees type player in place, I think he would have swallowed hard and thought twice about it.
Is that an indictment on Jameis Winston?
No. Jameis Winston was a serviceable, solid quarterback, and I don't think anybody could be disappointed with what he did. I think the Saints did a really good job of managing him, of managing his game. He's obviously a more mature player. He's obviously a more mature person, and I think that was reflected in how he played. But if you go back and look at the games, they never asked him to win a game. They never asked him to throw the ball 40 times. He completed 59% of his passes. That's well below average in the NFL, and it's not what you want, in particular indoors. That's not an indictment on him. His receivers weren't very good, and his offensive line wasn't very good either. But is he that guy to get you to the next level, to be a Super Bowl contender and maybe ultimately a championship team? I can't say that. I'm not going to tell you that he's not good enough to win with, because, I don't know, the 49ers are winning with Jimmy Garoppolo, and he's not as bad as people make him out to be, but he's not great by any stretch of the imagination. The Rams got to the Super Bowl with Jared Goff. I could go on and on. You can do it, but if you have that player at that position, your chances are incrementally better. So Winston is a dynamic that's going to be strangely unfolding in the next month or two, because to me, it's going to be all about who offers him what.
Right.
If he gets a substantial offer, I think he's gone.
Okay.
If he doesn't get a substantial offer, I think the Saints look at him as an affordable, solid option for a guy that can absolutely mind the story, if not be your guy eventually. Beauty's in the eye of the beholder. I don't know how Dennis Allen views this quarterback, Jameis Winston. I don't know how any potential new coach, if it's not Dennis Allen, would view him. But I do think this much of the other guys that are here, none of them are starting quarterbacks in the NFL.
With Peyton on the sidelines, with him running the offense, there was a lot of talk that this could be a destination for a Wilson, a Rodgers, a top quarterback. Has that evaporated now that he is gone?
I don't think it's evaporated. I think it's been dimmed. I think it's like a light switch. You have the dimmer and you have it fully lit when Peyton's here, and now it's probably half lit.
Okay.
New Orleans is still a good franchise. New Orleans has had 5 straight winning seasons. New Orleans had 4 straight championships in its own division. New Orleans has been in the playoffs all those years until this year, when they should have gone there, but the Rams screwed it up in a major way. So I think if you're on the outside looking in, you're saying, hey, this is a pretty good location. Is it the best? No. Is it the most desirable? No. But you're indoors, you're playing with an organization that has had stability, and even without Sean Payton, there's still stability here based upon personnel, based upon who's making the decisions, and based upon ownership. So I think from that perspective, it's still somewhat attractive, but I do think that Sean Payton was probably going to make the difference if you went external for a Russell Wilson or a Deshaun Watson.
Right.
I never thought Aaron Rodgers was a possibility.
I'm of the opinion that with the championship type defense that they have, that wide receiver position is one that you can quickly upgrade, especially if Michael Thomas comes back healthy. That's an if. Or if he comes back at all, okay? You have to backfill that offensive line. Teron Armstead is going to be a decision that has to be made. You don't let good players walk out the door, but again, his price tag may be too high, especially with the injury history. You've got to get a veteran tight end. And then you got to make a decision again at the free safety position. To me, the biggest question mark is quarterback. The other positions I think you can fill fairly quickly. Quarterback may be the toughest one. In your opinion, how far away is this team?
I think it depends on who the coach is, and I think it depends on what they're able to do with the cap, because it's not so much who you're going to add.
Right.
It's about who you're going to subtract.
Right.
Because we saw last year with the painful moves that had to be made and the subtractions, how it impacted this team. They were still a pretty good team this year. Not outstanding, a pretty good team when healthy.
Right.
But what they didn't have was depth.
Right.
And once guys started going down, it impacted them tremendously. Guys went down in 2020. They were among the most injured team in the league other than San Francisco in 2020, but you didn't notice it because the next guy up was good.
Yeah, very good. Could have been a star elsewhere.
Sure. This year, that wasn't the case.
Right.
So I think it's all about the depth issue. They've got to get Marcus Williams back. Look, they let Trey Hendrickson go to tag Marcus Williams.
Right.
And Trey Hendrickson was a terrific young player who continues to prove how good he is. I understand why they did it, because they saw Marcus Davenport, they saw Cam Jordan, they saw Granderson, they added Passignon in free agency, and then, of course, they drafted a kid number 1 in Peyton Turner.
Right.
So I understood that, whereas it's hard to find that field roamer in the back. And does Williams tackle well? No. He's better than he was previously, but he'll never be that. Does he make incorrect reads at times? Sure. But show me another safety, maybe 1 or 2 others in the league that can cover as much ground as he does, and it goes hash mark to hash mark.
So you're all for him coming back?
Oh, absolutely. I think they have to bring him back. He's made plays. He covers enormous ground. He fits the scheme. He's comfortable. Dennis Allen likes him, and I think that's very important. So I think he's back. I think the other decisions, the Teron Armstead stuff, because right off the bat, who do you think about? How would Teron Armstead be looking a Cincinnati Bengals uniform? A franchise that desperately needs
first thing I thought of.
Desperately needs a tackle, and desperately
and they
needs
have money.
And they have a franchise quarterback, and they've got money. And he's still a good player.
Very good.
The problem is keeping him on the field, and you've got the whole left side of your offensive line that can't stay on the field. You re-signed Andrew Speed and spent money that for a guy that was a solid player but nothing special, and a guy that simply doesn't play enough. So now you're talking about 2 guys on that side of your offensive line that you will have invested in, And is that a sound investment? You have to ask yourself that. Then there's the whole Taysom Hill situation with they overpaid him, and yet I think it's really terribly unfair the way he's been. Fans have turned on the guy in many cases, and I think it's unfortunate and it's not right. Number one, he didn't pay himself. Number two, now you don't like him because he's playing quarterback. And why do we pay a special teams guy or a specialty guy this kind of money? You can make that argument, and it's a pretty sound argument, and maybe they did overpay him, but maybe it's because they knew what the what other teams were looking to do and how many people might have been interested in him at the time. He still can be a solid backup quarterback, but he can still do so many other things well. Although at this point you have to be concerned about the injuries because this is the second one to a different foot.
Right. Liz Frank is hard to come back.
It is, and it's a major procedure. So the money's tied up there. The money's tied up with Andrew Speed. So if you make, my point is, if you make that investment in Trahan Armstead, then where are you? The Saints are up against the cap, and everybody wants to point at management. This is the same management that gave you all these great teams, and they were trying to win the Super Bowl in 2020. That's why they went all in and spent all this money, and they were set up to do it, and unfortunately they lost to Tampa Bay, didn't play well, and therefore you pay the price after the fact.
And
because
COVID
you're
also
overpaid.
influenced that as well.
Well,
the
it
losses
did.
within the NFL. They had a plan to be able to, again, pay off this this dead money. Like I believe they have a plan now. You know, they're saying $71 million. You know, all these contracts that are, as you know, that are put forth by Mickey Loomis and the Saints have these out clauses where they can generate money. And I fully believe that they're going to be aggressive in this offseason. They're going to be able to get through this cap situation. And look, the cap, unless there's another COVID situation, the cap's going to keep going up. So again, eventually you're going to be in a situation where, again, the cap's not going to be as big of an issue, especially if you're not paying a franchise quarterback, which again is something that has to happen. I want to talk about the head coach, but I want to talk about this next dynamic. And I talked about it on the show yesterday. You just mentioned it. Sean Payton ran everything. Mickey Loomis, again, general manager, very, very powerful within the organization, but he stood in the shadow for Payton for 16 years.
And he likes it that way.
He does. Do you think that with the changing of the guard here, you know, you mentioned them, and I mentioned them yesterday on the show, Omar Khan, Ryan Pace, Kai Harley, Terry Fondo, trained all these guys, right? Do you expect him to take more of a prominent role? The last word on personnel, stuff that, again, maybe Payton did in his role as general manager. Do you expect that to expand now?
I would say yes, and of course it also depends on who he hires.
Sure.
And what kind of personality, what that particular individual wants. I think if you stay within, getting back to Dennis Allen, yes, Loomis does take much more of a role and becomes the unequivocal decision maker and leader, because you got a guy that's been a subservient individual now for several years in two different stints, which is not to diminish him at all. He's a good coach and he's a good man. And I think he'd do a good job here.
He did what he had to do here to make the
Sure he would. And anybody that comes in here now, it's going to be hard, because the old axiom about following a legend is true. It's difficult, but that's another reason I think he would be best served to be that guy, because he could be a bridge or he could be long term. But either way, the owner likes him, administration likes him, the players like him. You mentioned Trahan Armstead. He was out publicly yesterday strongly advocating for Dennis Allen to be the coach, and I guarantee his defensive players feel the same way. So I think Mickey Loomis would be more of that guy in terms of leadership and making abilities. Let's not forget how Mickey arrived here from Seattle in the first place. He was a cap guy and a financial person, and he still is that guy. And he was elevated when Randy Mueller was dismissed to become the general manager of the franchise. But some of these individuals you mentioned were around at the time and obviously played a large role, and Jeff Ireland certainly does now when it comes to personnel. I think Mickey can handle it and handle it just well and do well, and depending on who the coach is, and I think he probably will. Interestingly enough, Omar Khan, I know personally, and he's a friend, went to the same high school, everything else, but I will say this, and this is not coming from Omar at all. This is coming from a couple of other people. Don't be surprised if Omar Khan is not the successor to Roger Goodell.
Really?
Yes.
Wow. New Orleans' own.
Ultimately.
Right.
Not now, ultimately.
Right. Jeff Ireland, his role. I think, again, he was someone that Peyton trusted. That obviously, you see what he's done with these drafts. Does he get more of a prominent role here, or is it still Loomis, Ireland, coach?
Yeah, I think it's got to be a triangle and a triumvirate of people. I think the old saying, 2 heads are better than one,
right.
3 heads are better than one, but ultimately one person has to make the decision.
Right. And
they have been 3 people in one these last several years. Look, Sean Payton wasn't the only guy.
No.
The 3 of them were together,
yes.
and they largely agreed on things, but if push came to shove, we all know
who got the last call.
And who was the decision maker. It was Sean Payton. But no, Jeff Ireland's really good, and that's why he's drawn interest from other entities. And look, he's a guy that you'd love in any capacity to retain on a long-term basis because he's excellent at what he does.
All right, they have to go outside the organization, again, via the Rooney Rule. They have to at least interview one minority candidate. Eric Bieniemy's been talked about, native New Orleans, and he deserves a head coaching job. Flores, again, just was let go by Miami. There's a lot of minority candidates out there that are deserving of a head coaching position. It's a little different here in New Orleans right now, though. Again, the natural succession of things is to try to hold on to the culture that was built by Peyton, which means, again, try to be able to hold on to the coaching staff, which means an elevation probably of Dennis Allen. What do you think happens? Is that the mindset here? Again, the blueprint has been laid out. It's there. Now let's try to be able to keep this together, especially again from the players all the way now to, again, the new head coach.
I wrote a column last year at CrescentCitySports.com about Omar Khan and Eric Bieniemy and how they richly deserve to be at the top of their professions. How Omar deserves to be a general manager, and it's long overdue.
Right.
And how Eric Bieniemy deserves to be a head coach,
yes.
and it's long overdue. And both have been interviewed. If you could count, if you go back and just Google it, Omar's been interviewed like 6 times for general manager's jobs.
Okay.
Bieniemy's been interviewed at least 4 times for head coaching jobs. And I don't know if they don't do well in interviews. I don't know if each situation was unique. I don't know if there was any skewed bias whatsoever. I can't answer that. I have no idea. I do know that both are incredibly qualified and richly deserving of the opportunity. Who's going to give it to them? I don't know. If the New Orleans Saints were broken, borrowing the old axiom and fracturing English, which I hate to do, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Sure.
It ain't broke here. And some would say, well, they were 9-8, they're not the same team. I would beg to differ. If this team were reasonably healthy, they're a minimum 10-7.
I agree.
And they're probably 11-6. Okay, they blew the Giants game. Just a terrible loss to a very bad team.
Right.
That's the one that you rue the day. The Carolina loss on the road early in the season, they were missing way too many guys. Everybody was out, and the whole COVID thing crushed them. And then the Miami game was the same thing, just absolutely crushed them. They got a really bad call at Tennessee where they outplayed the Titans and should have won the game and lost that game. They blew the Falcons game in the last seconds at home after they overcame a deficit. Yeah, there's a lot of things to point to, but in every one of those instances, had they been healthy, I think they were better. So in my estimation, it's not broken. You hire a guy from the outside, and Eric Bieniemy or Brian Flores or anybody
from
the outside to change a culture and to change an organization and how you think, and change your coaches and change even people within the organization, maybe even the training staff. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Every aspect of it. But this doesn't scream out for that. You got some really good people in place here. And a head coach, as we've seen with Brian Kelly, another topic, has every right to bring in the people that he is comfortable with. And the LSU situation might have been perceived by some to not be broken, but it was. And that's why you make a change 2 years later with a guy that won a national championship, whether you love him or not. So there's a perfect comparison where, one, it was time to break it and tear it down and start over again with different people. And the other, I don't think they're at that level. I think they're at a level where you forge on with a pretty good team, with stability in the organization, and with a coach that's had head coaching experience, regardless of his record, and you're very comfortable with, and who stepped in when your coach had COVID and did a fine job, and everyone respects him.
I'll throw another name out to you, Aaron Glenn.
Great coach. Sean Payton recognized that. He had him as a top assistant. Aside from being the defensive backs coach. And of course, Aaron went with Dan Campbell, who, by the way, timing is bad. If Dan Campbell's still been here, he probably would have been the guy.
Right.
Sharp guy, was the associate head coach.
Yep.
And I think he's going to be good. Anybody that watched Detroit this year said that. Ignore the record. This guy is a hardest worker. He's incredibly enthusiastic.
Great motivator.
Attention to detail. He motivates, but he's not leaving after 1 year in Detroit.
He can't.
Aaron Glenn went with him. Yeah, he could leave. Aaron Glenn is a really good football coach. Aaron Glenn would command the absolute respect of that locker room. They know him, they like him, they respect him, and they understand he's good at what he does. So I think there's that. And I also think that Joe Lombardi would be the same kind of guy. Joe Lombardi did a really good job here with quarterbacks and with offense. He went to the Chargers, and Justin Herbert's done okay last time I checked. And the name doesn't hurt either, and it cannot be ignored.
Right.
So I think you certainly, when you look at the Peyton tree, those guys certainly come to mind. You certainly would think Doug Marrone as well. He's been a head coach twice, and by the way, with pretty good success. And he's at Alabama with a guy named Saban, and he's a guy that coached here. And again, part of the coaching tree. I don't think you would ignore that at all. And not part of the coaching tree, but a guy that I certainly think, and I put this in the story that Lenny Van Gilder did at CrescentCitySports.com, that I think you should absolutely at least take a look at, is Doug Peterson. Why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
I mean, he won a Super Bowl, and then he went 9-7 2 straight years. It's not like he was losing. His quarterback went south, and then injuries, and that's not his fault, and then their personnel decisions were lousy and left him without any weapons at all, and he lost his job. Well, he did what Andy Reid couldn't do in Philadelphia. He won a Super Bowl, and by the way, he won it with a guy named Nick Foles at quarterback. And by the way, he went to Louisiana Monroe. And by the way, he coached 4 years as the head coach at Calvary Baptist High School, where I went to do a playoff game, John Curtis against Calvary Baptist, to do the game, and he entertained me all day long, treated me to lunch, showed me facilities, talked about everything under the sun. The nicest guy you ever met, and a proven head coach. I would certainly keep him in the conversation. I think he should be in the conversation. I think Bieniemy and Aaron Glenn are prominent in the conversation. I don't know that Brian Flores is, but he probably deserves a look. But I still believe at the end of the day that Dennis Allen is going to be their head coach.
Does that mean that Carmichael's the offensive coordinator?
I would think so. Why wouldn't he be?
Who is elevated to defensive coordinator?
That's an interesting decision to make. I mean, if you look within at what he has on this coaching staff right now, I think it's pretty good. Some have said, well, then bring Aaron Glenn back and let him do that. Well, I don't think he's going to leave for a lateral position when he didn't get the job in the first place. So I don't think that would happen. He might be external in that regard. I don't know. But are there people on this staff that are qualified? Sure. I think they have good coaches, and I think he certainly would look at that. One way or the other, you're going to have a couple of new coaches on this staff.
No, there is. There'll be other coaches that may leave for other jobs.
Exactly.
Okay, that's
Sean Payton not here. Sure.
Right, exactly.
And who knows where Sean Payton's going to end up. I'll pull my phone out because I think this is, and I listen closely to everything as you do. And that's, if you're truly a reporter and objective, you've got to listen because words matter.
Yes.
I don't think I will coach this year. That's not where my heart is right now. I don't think doesn't say I won't. Right now was 3 days ago.
Exactly.
What about today?
That's right.
So I think he's a very smart man.
Yes, he is.
I think his words were chosen very carefully.
I think everything was chosen very carefully yesterday.
This wasn't a guy getting up and saying, I am not going to Alabama.
No.
Okay, this isn't a Nick Saban moment.
No.
Or I can name some others that were along the same lines. So when he does end up coaching somewhere else, which I think he will, you can't say he lied. Because that's not exactly what he said. He did. And then he said he probably would like to coach again. Look, this was clearly family. He remarried not too long ago, and there's no question that this was largely about that. But again, I'll go back to what I told you initially. His playbook is going to follow his mentor, Bill Parcells. Bill Parcells left the Giants with Super Bowl wins, went to television for 2 years. Then he got back into coaching with the New England Patriots, took them to a Super Bowl here in New Orleans at a game that I covered against the Packers. And then he had a fight with management. He went to the Jets and was the head coach there. Then what did he do? He got out of it, left the Jets to go back into television, and then after 3 years he came back to coach the Cowboys. So I think Peyton at 58 reads the tea leaves, follows the playbook, goes into television for a year, maybe two, and then gets back into coaching. The only danger there is that he's a flavor of the day right now. But by the time he gets back into coaching, if he waits 2 or 3 years, there's going to be 5 to 10 other flavors of the day, and maybe your star has faded a little bit.
TV helps. You're out.
Oh, well, that's
Come
it.
on.
You just said it.
TV helps.
That's a platform for so many of these guys. And if he's there and he's visible all the time, then there's no question he's going to be a name mentioned all the time. Anytime something came up, the agent will plant that. Television will plant that because it enhances their ratings and their own visibility. So I certainly believe, A, he'll be rumored for jobs, B, that he will coach again at some point.
So do I. We're way behind on our break. Thank you, Will, for not interrupting our conversation
My fault.
here. We'll take a quick break, hear from our underwriters. We'll be right back. Put a bow on the New Orleans Saints, head to the Pelicans, college football, and college basketball. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports.
BURKHARDT's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration has been family-owned and operated since 1989. BURKHARDT has energy-efficient solutions and offers brands such as Mitsubishi ductless AC units and Amana, the only manufacturer with a lifetime unit replacement warranty. BURKHARDT offers maintenance bundle packages that include servicing your AC, generator, and tankless water heater. For more information on the services BURKHARDT provides, visit acpromise.com. BURKHARDT's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration, providing comfort for life.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's diners, drive-ins, and dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. Ken Trahan is our guest. Ken, let's put a bow on this. How quickly do you think the Saints will come to a decision on their new head coach? Senior Bowl's next week. You know, that's huge.
Quickly. I think they'll have their interviews set up and ready to go within a matter of days.
Okay.
And I think that process will take no more than 2 weeks.
Okay.
And I think they'll probably have a coach in place by the beginning of March, if not earlier. I can't see it any other way because you've got to have continuity in the organization, and there's so many day-to-day things that have to be done.
Yes.
And planning. And right now I'm waiting on word from the organization about some Saints Hall of Fame events and how we plan it in coordination with them, which is all contingent on the off-season training activities and everything that takes place. So all that has to be established. So that's why I think it's going to happen quickly. Plus, I think they know the direction they want to go in.
Last question about Peyton, and there was a lot of conversation. I had it on my show about there was talk that was burnout here. I don't know if I'm buying, after watching that press conference, I don't know if I'm buying burnout.
I'm not buying it. I think, is he a little tired? Yes. Is he getting older? Are you feeling more tired when you get older? Sure. Was it a tough season? Absolutely. Was it tough post-Drew Brees? Unequivocally. Was it tough relocating your team? Without a doubt. Was it tough having to play a home game in Jacksonville? Sure. But still, he had a competitive team. We had a team that, again, with a few breaks here and there, injury-wise, COVID-wise, they win at least one more game. And that gets them in. Therefore, and also based on the way he coached, I didn't see any evidence of that.
I didn't either.
So, none. I really didn't see any evidence.
He looked frustrated at times, but who wasn't?
No, the frustration was there, but I ultimately believe that, look, nothing is forever, and nothing ever will be forever on this earth. We're all finite beings in every aspect of life. But from the standpoint of being in one place for 16 years, there's only one person in the league that's been in their job longer, and Bill Belichick. And that is an incredibly, insanely long time. And Parcells, his mentor, has always talked about the 10-year itch. Always. And Peyton went well beyond that.
Well, he had a Hall of Fame quarterback.
He did, and when he reached that mark in 10 years, 2016, they were 7-9, but then all of a sudden they started winning again and winning substantially.
But there was a lot of talk back then that maybe there was a flirtation with moving on to maybe a Dallas or another franchise.
Well, let's not underestimate what happened in 2012. it set this organization back 2, 3,
Absolutely
4 years. It hurt this organization immensely, and I will never.
It really killed
I will
the
never
Super Bowl.
forgive Roger Goodell for overreacting and for overacting and overreaching.
Right.
And I am not here to suggest that the Saints were saintly in this. They weren't. But what was said that they did was completely fabricated in the sense that it wasn't nearly that serious.
No.
It just wasn't.
No.
Did they not adhere to things when they were warned? Correct. Did they do some things that weren't right? Sure. Was it everything it was made out to be? No. Because if that was the case, why would an independent individual and a man with the integrity of Paul Tagliabue vacate penalties? And basically, he's telling you loud and clear, this was an overreaction. I mean, you suspended assistant coaches. You suspended the general manager. You suspended the coach for an entire year and told him to stay away, coming off of a season where I think you had the best team you ever had. You crushed the 2012 season, crushed it. And I thought you saw the difference in coaching and stability in 2013, where somehow he had a remarkable season and took them to the playoffs and won a game. But he was doing it largely with mirrors, because we saw what they were really like in 14, 15, and 16, because personnel decisions had really hurt them. Not having their coach had really hurt them. And obviously they weren't the same team.
Yeah, no doubt. Let's shift gears to the Pelicans. 18-29. They're if you look at the standings, they're in 11th place now. They're 2.5 games out of the 10th spot. 7-5 in December, 5-7 during January thus far. It's been a tough January in terms of opponents. They're 5-5 in their last 10. The trading deadline is February the 10th. They need help. Now, I know Zion put out a cryptic Instagram post this week that everybody thinks he's on his way back. I think he's still got to fit in. Injuries have really hurt this team because of, again, losing Ingram multiple times here. That's kind of stymied them. But when Ingram was on the court and they were fairly healthy, they were very, very competitive. Kenny, what does this team need?
Oh, boy. They need any depth whatsoever, because they don't have any. They are completely lacking with their bench productivity. They don't have it. Nickeil Alexander-Walker is the only consistent, productive player off the bench. Jackson Hayes has improved and has done some good things in the last month. And Willy Hernan-Gomez, look, he's like, you just flip the switch and put him in. He could sit for 7 games and go in and get you a double-double, and yet he doesn't play much of the time. But after that, what else do you have? I mean, there's nothing there. I mean, you can make an argument that Alvarado's done a nice job and come on a little bit, but Garrett Temple is not that guy. Tomas Satoransky is not that guy. You know, Najee Marshall is not that guy. Clark is not that guy, with all due respect. So when they go to their bench, they just routinely get outscored and get beat. So they struggle with that. And then, of course, Devontae Graham has done some good things for them. I think he'd be better suited to be the ultimate sixth man.
Me too.
Rather than a starter and being a guy you're counting on every night to be that guy. We know what Jonas Valanciunas is. He's been your best player. He's done everything well from day one, better than anybody could have expected, frankly. Brandon Ingram is an alpha dog when he's healthy, and he's that guy. Herbert Jones has been remarkable as a rookie and has a really good future, and you have to really like what he's been able to do for this basketball team as well. And I could digress, but yeah, I think they need somebody that can score the basketball off the bench. But in addition to that, look, you got to find out what you have in Trey Murphy. I understand he struggled and has been disappointing, but you're not getting much out of Temple. You're not getting much out of Satoransky.
You're saying put him on the court.
Put him on the court and let him play himself. If he is what you think he was, let him play himself into it.
Well, the only way he's going to ever feel comfortable in shooting in the NBA is to get in an NBA game and shoot.
Right.
I mean,
yeah, and play he was supposed to be a 3-and-D guy.
Right,
well,
exactly.
He's a bench guy. He's sitting and watching right now. He's in protocols. But bottom line is that you drafted him there for a reason. You believed in him, and you saw the promise in the summer league, which, by the way, means absolutely nothing. Nothing, just like training camp in the NFL, by the way. So that said, people get all excited about that stuff, and I crack up every year. So give him a chance to play. Maybe he becomes a guy that can help fill a void and score the ball a little bit for you, because they simply don't have enough firepower.
What about a scoring guard, a point guard, somebody that can help them in the backcourt? There's been a lot of talk. Levert, McCollum. I mean, you go right down the line of, again, even Fox out at Sacramento, although I don't think they're letting him go. What are your thoughts?
What are you going to give up? I mean, that's to me what it's all about.
Well, I mean, these draft picks at this point, you've got to go all in.
They got a bunch of draft picks to utilize, and question is how valuable is that to others?
Right.
If it's number ones, there's value in that.
Right.
If it's number twos, there's no value in that. So
those are throw-ins.
Yeah, if you can identify that one guy, because I like what I've seen of this team. They're not good enough, but boy, they play hard every night.
Really do.
And this coach has gotten better and better. Players obviously like him and play hard for him. I think he's got a great future in this league. He's an eminently likable, honest guy, and I think they made a really good hire.
I think you're going to equate him to what Sean Payton is when he came into New Orleans for the Saints. I think you're looking at a young coach that's got an opportunity now that has a chance to be really great.
I think so, in different ways, because Willie Green is more of a lower key guy and not the dynamic personality that a Payton is, but from the standpoint of coaching, absolutely. And both command the respect of their players.
Yes.
The most important thing, of course, because we saw last year they didn't respect the coach.
No doubt. Brian Kelly has taken over the LSU Tigers, the defections, the transfer portal, the NFL opt-outs, graduation, academic casualties. But he seems in a short period of time with the transfer portal to at least triage the program.
Oh, I think that's accurate. I might go beyond that. I think he's done a really good job. And again, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. Everybody had vastly different opinions about his hiring, and I'm sure you got it on radio too. Some people hated the move and thought it was a terrible move. You're hiring this old guy who always got killed in the playoffs and so forth and so on. Then there's the other side that said this guy has been a consistent winner everywhere he's been, and he's organized as can be, and he understands what it takes. And then there's the other part that I will tack on to that. They need a culture change in a big way, much like we talked about with the Saints, how they don't need that.
Right.
LSU needs that.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter whether you loved or couldn't stand Ed Orgeron. I am always going to be grateful to Ed Orgeron for what he brought to LSU in his home state and how much it meant to him. And I like the guy personally, but unfortunately it got away from him and he made some bad decisions and they ended up crushing him. But the culture got away. You had guys opting out left and right. You had guys that didn't want to play when they had hangnails.
Yes.
I could go on and on. And that's got to change. So I think you're already seeing with the kind of players he's bringing in via the transfer portal, which has been significant, but also the kind of players that he's signing are guys that he deems to be character guys, guys that he think they're going to come there and they're going to love wearing the purple and gold with a white jersey.
Yes.
They're going to love the letters on that helmet. They're not going to be all about what's in it for me. Give me the the money for the NILs, and I'm going to play 1 year and I'm looking somewhere else. So I think that's the other value that he brings to it, frankly. And at Notre Dame, you didn't see players opting out by and large, and you didn't see players transferring.
No.
And I think,
but that's a different kind of athlete.
It is a different. Well, again, the culture and the type of player they were attracting, certainly, and not at all a knock on LSU, but a little bit of a higher academic standard and demands that were made there. So a different
Catholic
type
University.
of player, and definitely a culture there that existed that might be a little bit different. But that's also what attracted him to LSU, is that it's carte blanche. He can go anywhere to get a player, and he can get a player in. But I think ultimately he just burned to compete at the highest level in the country. And who wouldn't want to try the SEC when you're adding Texas and you're adding Oklahoma to go along with Alabama and to go with Georgia and LSU and Florida and Auburn when it's right, and don't forget about Ole Miss and what they've been able to build, and on. Tennessee's getting there too. What an incredible conference. And now Brian Kelly will get to measure himself against it. I liked the hire, and I think he's done a very good job to mitigate an enormous amount of departures and the damage that may have been done.
100% agree. LSU is 19th in the nation, 16-4, 4-4 in the SEC. Big win over A&M last night to snap a 3-game losing streak. They are just mired in injuries right now.
Crushed. Yeah, not having Pinson, they don't really have a point guard without him, so that's really hurt them. Darius Days is the heart and soul of their team, and he's out. And then during the game, in the win over A&M, Tari Eason gets hurt. And to win that game was an incredible test of character, and you've got to give them enormous credit for being able to overcome those things. And they were down virtually the whole second half to win that game and to kind of right the ship a little bit. Do I think it's a Final Four team? No. Do I think it's a Final 8 team? No. Do I think it could be as good as a Final 16 team if every piece is in place? Possibly. SEC's good this year. Auburn's number one for a reason. I've seen them 3 times. They're really good. And, I mean, they're all that. Kentucky's still Kentucky. They're good. LSU got a great win over them. But I could go down a list. There's at least 6 teams that are really good in that league, and there's another 2 or 3 that are pretty good. Just take out Vanderbilt, and Ole Miss isn't very good. South Carolina's okay. Georgia's not that good. But then that's only 4. Take the rest, and they're all pretty good. Mississippi State's average. So, in the age-old question about Will Wade, he's done a really good job every year of replenishing talent and keeping LSU at an NCAA tournament level. So you got to give him all the credit in the world for that. The problem is a lot of people nationally don't like him at all, and they never will. But locally, they really like you as long as you win. Right. So stay tuned, and people will ask that question of you and of me forever. When's this going to happen? When's this going to happen? I don't know. It may never happen. The further we go, the longer we go, the more likely it is, as John Brady told me last year, that it's probably not going to happen.
I would agree with that. Got 2 minutes left. Want to get to Tulane and UNO. Tulane 8-9, 5-3 in the American, 4th place, but 2 huge wins, blowing out Tulsa and Wichita State. How good is this team?
Jalen Cook and Jalen Forbes. It's all about 2 players. They're really good players, and to get Cook has made the day. Some people would say, man, why couldn't he be doing for LSU? He was buried at LSU, and he wasn't going to play, and he had a chance to go to Tulane and be a prime guy, and he's done just that. So a lot of credit to him, and he's been really good. They're competitive. Their league is not quite what it was previously with the teams that got out, so they'll be competitive. I don't think they'll win it. Could they be a postseason team? Possibly. I don't think it's NCAA, though.
Mark Schlesinger, 10-8 right now. Undefeated, 3-0 in the South, and they're in 1st place. Your thoughts?
Beat the best teams in Southeastern and Nichols. Of course, they did it at home. So the wins thus far are at home. They got to go on the road and beat a good team or 2. Hold court at home, win 3 or 4 on the road. You can win the Southland. It's a 1-bid league. You got to go win the tournament.
Your alma mater, Loyola, 17-1, 7-1 overall, losing just Faulkner. They dropped to number 3 in NAIA. How good is this team?
Really good, man. They've got 4 guys that could play at the next level, and they've got depth. Stacey Hollowell has done a fantastic job. You talk about a guy that probably should be a candidate for a Division I job. It's Stacey Hollowell. He's charismatic. He can recruit. He can coach. He's done a remarkable job. And oh, by the way, his team's been displaced all year. They just got back to the den. They were traveling nomads, playing everywhere. And did you notice? No, because they don't get any coverage by and large, although I give it to them. But beyond that, you got to give them an enormous amount of credit because they withstood the distractions to be where they are. Really good team.
Always good to have you, Ken. Thanks so much.
My pleasure. It's always good to visit with you. Inside New Orleans, not just television, but radio, 4 to 6, Monday through Friday on 106.1 FM, Nash Icon.
And of course, all access at 6 from 6 to 7. And don't forget about during the prep season, the best prep show anywhere, right on 106.1 FM. Thanks so much for tuning in. Remember, there is plenty of ways to be able to catch our program now in terms of rebroadcast. First one is 6 o'clock tonight on LAE, 10 o'clock on The Deuce, WLAE-TV 2, 9 o'clock every Friday night on Pelican Sports Television, 10 o'clock on LAE, 2 a.m. on Saturday mornings on The Deuce, and we finish up at 5 p.m. on Pelican Sports Television every Saturday afternoon. At Eric_Asher on Twitter, Eric Asher on Facebook, Inside New Orleans Show on Instagram, on the WLAE-TV YouTube page, and also at ericasher.com. Again, as Ken mentioned, 4 to 6, you catch me on the radio on 106.1 FM, leading right into Ken and Jude's show from 6 to 7. It's a great block of talk. You need to check it out at your leisure. Remember, the Anchor is our home base for our podcast, but our podcast is everywhere. And, of course, you can always catch us on ericasher.com as well, iHeartRadio app, TuneIn Radio app. Also want to thank the underwriters that make this show possible. Please continue to support our great underwriters. Without those underwriters, this show is not possible. Thanks to each and every one of those underwriters. Also want to thank the staff here at WLAE-TV. Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Lowen Graffia, and also Alex Chacon, and of course the best director in the business, William Hill. For Ken Trahan, I'm Eric Asher. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next week for another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports.